Are you a hobby welder, disheartened by watching experts perform perfect welds on coupon stock? Well, I'm a 65-year-old hobby welder with shaky hands, and this is about as good as I can get. I find this pretty boring, and besides, I don't have to earn a living from this. I'm only doing it for fun. So, this is what I'm going to make today. An aluminium flask. The first step is to make this aluminium neck and cap. Of course you can buy these things, but I happen to have a brother who has a lathe. What's more, he knows how to use it. So we start with the knurling tool and then bore out the centre of the cap. Then it's on to finishing the inside. Don't you just love the look of the swarf coming off that aluminium? With that done, it's time to do the thread. So I randomly pick a thread size. The lathe gets set up for cutting a thread, and on it goes to cut the inside thread. Very fascinating. Then the parting tool takes the cap off the stock. And we have a lovely knurled aluminium cap. Then it's on to build the neck. You can call me easily pleased, but I love the look of a swarf coming off this aluminium. First pass for the thread. It takes a number of passes to get the thread to the right depth. And then it's time to test. Let's give it a go. Ooh, yes, that feels really good. So the neck gets bored out. Again, beautiful swarfs coming off that aluminium. And then finally, cutting it off the stock. Watching this whole process has really given me an appreciation of the amount of work that goes into a turned product. To me, these are pieces of art, not just engineering. Alrighty then, it's back to my own shed to actually make the flask. I find it easier to draw the pattern on paper. Then I can just cut them out and paste them onto the 3mm aluminium sheet that I'm going to use. I find that my cutting out process is a lot more accurate when I use this as a template. As you probably saw, the sides of the flask are curved. I've bought a piece of 50mm pipe, and I'm going to measure this for the sides of the flask and then cut the pipe in half. So I've got 2 half circles for both sides of the flask. Now it's just a simple matter of cutting the pipe along its length and then cutting off to the right size. To give myself every chance of being able to weld this aluminium successfully, I need to make it smooth and clean. So I take off all the rough cut edges. Before I cut out the filler section, I need to drill that hole. So I'm using one of these step drill type thingies to drill a 30mm hole in the aluminium. Now I can cut this and the other aluminium pieces out on the bandsaw, ready for sticking together with the welder. Now that I've got the filler section cut out, I need to just make sure that the neck fits in. We've built it with a lip on the bottom. As you can see, insert, beautiful, fits perfectly. I'm going to weld it on the inside so there's no weld on the outside. I haven't shown it, but all the aluminium parts I'm using have been brushed and cleaned. So now it's just a matter of tacking that neck into the filler hole and then welding around it to make it watertight. Well, there you go. Tacked in, ready for welding. Yes, I know it's not pretty. I told you that I was a hobby welder and these weren't going to be perfect welds. Don't you just find it satisfying to see bad welds being produced rather than perfect welds every time from those expert welders? And no, I'm not putting myself down. I realise the skills I don't have, but that's not the point. The point is I still enjoy it. Because hobby welding is about having fun and pleasing yourself, not others. As you can see, there was a lot of faffing around to get to this point where all I've done is tack the sides together. But if one thing I've learnt in the past is that getting it straight the first time is really worth spending the extra time on. Now I can concentrate on running some nice straight lines. Straight. Well, it's a concept, but one I can rarely achieve. With the sides welded on, it's time for the filler. And no, I haven't made a mistake by making it too short. I'm going to angle the sides just to make the flask look a little bit more interesting. Ta-da! It's progressing. These are nothing like perfect welds, but I'm pleased. So it's on with the next step of cutting the sides off on a bit of an angle. I wasn't smart enough to work out how to draw these sides on paper, so I'm just going to trace out the hole that I've cut. It's a bit of faffing around, but I end up with pieces that fit, and in the end, that's all that matters. With the shoulders stuck on, I'm nearly finished. I was smart enough to draw the base the right size, so it was just a simple matter of cutting that out, and now it's time to tack and then weld. As I've mentioned previously, I've got shaky hands, so I've made this little wrist rest that just helps a little bit to make the weld a little bit more smooth as I progress along the line. Despite the custom wrist rest, the welds are still not perfectly straight, but they're good enough for me. Now comes the important bit. Does it hold water? Well, surprisingly, yes it does. No leaks whatsoever. I'll take that as a win and give myself a big pat on the back. The final step is to bling it up a bit with some metal polish. The white cleaning action lines on each side of the weld can be a bit stubborn, so I'm using 00 steel wool with the polish to start with, and then polish the whole lot off with the rag. The end result is not one of perfection, but it's good enough for me. And of course that is all that matters. With a final polish, here's the finished product. The flask holds about 700 ml. It's got an O-ring in the lid so that the lid doesn't leak. When reviewing my welds, I found that really there was only one that was almost passable. But as I've said, this isn't the point for hobby welding. It's all about the fun and enjoyment and getting a finished product that is passable, at least in my own mind. And it beats welding coupons any day.